I started making short films, and at the time, Funny or Die was kind enough to start kind of featuring some of my short form work that I was sort of producing and writing and performing in. And, you know, other people were directing them. I was kind of directing some of the super low budget stuff we were doing, but Funny or Die was initially a really big platform for me, and I'm still to this day endlessly grateful.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Film Forums. Today I have the absolute pleasure of talking to Brian Petsos and Greg. I'm really sorry, I can't pronounce your surname. How do I say it?
It's Lauritano.
Lauritano, amazing.
Yep.
Thank you so much for letting me talk to you guys both today. I was going to start off with just asking kind of a broad question, but what was the process like in order to make your first feature film?
Sure. Well, obviously, you know, making any feature film is nearly impossible. Making a first feature film is doubly impossible. For me, it was a transition away from performing and making a clear, conscious decision to start doing this directing thing that I thought I was going to do when I was very old and gray. And really, you know, I started off making some kind of low fidelity short form stuff. And then the budgets on the short form stuff kind of got larger and larger, culminating in two short films that I made with Oscar Isaac called Lightning Face and Tiki Tacky before that. And sort of using the thrust of that to kind of, you know, get the muscle up and put this one together.
Mm-hmm. When I was looking into it, I saw that you had done short films before. And I was going to ask, like, because I'm an actor and I know I have lots of actor friends, and we all kind of, you know, do bits of writing here and there. And obviously you went to art school first, and then what made you kind of go from art to then start improvising, acting? What was that first transition like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I went to art school. My first year, I actually did study film. And my second year, I studied photo. My third year, I studied design, and my fourth year, I studied fine art. And sort of, I kind of designed that 4-year thrust that way. And then living in Chicago, I sort of was kind of pushed to Second City, which, you know, so many people that we know and love have come out of that theater. Bill Murray and Chris Farley and, you know, all these just incredible folks. And so I found myself improvising and then studying as an improviser, you call it straight acting. You know, I just always wanted to make films, and it was always a thing that was so impossible to even imagine doing. And so the acting was sort of the closest thing to it. And then while acting, I started writing in a real way. And everything just kind of started moving forward from there.
Like, do you have any tips for like young writers to in general, really? What made your short films kind of get noticed? I'm trying to...
Well, I was writing features. I wasn't even writing short films. I started writing feature films. And, you know, you write a feature film and it's like, okay, now what do I do with this PDF? And at the time, you just have no idea what to do. And everything seems so, you know, esoteric and impossible to really visualize. So, you know, I started making short films, and at the time, Funny or Die was kind enough to start kind of featuring some of my short form work that I was sort of producing and writing and performing in. And, you know, other people were directing them. I was kind of directing some of the super low budget stuff we were doing, but Funny or Die was initially a really big platform for me, and I'm still to this day endlessly grateful. And then the shorts became more and more expensive, and we did a couple for the HBO show, the Funny or Die HBO show, at that point, the production value was pretty high. And so, when I ended up making a decision to start like really directing, I had that as like a benchmark, and I knew I wanted to find, the budget to make really pretty looking stuff. and so, it's always going out and trying to find money, of course, which Greg can attest is always a little bit of a sandpaper to the skin.
Yeah, and I think just to go back to your original question, how it came together, we went out with the script and Brian's short films, which a lot of people had already seen. And the amount of overwhelming response we got from cast was pretty intense, and agents. And I think Brian having the acting background as well as his writing skill set just gives actors an excitement about playing in the sandbox. And the response has just been great. We were able to put together a great cast, obviously. So
I was going to ask about your cast. I watched the film and I really enjoyed it. And I was going to ask how did that happen? Like, as your first feature film, to have such an all-star cast is quite amazing. And was that because of you built up this, connection and relationships with people through your short films?
Obviously, it's an interesting thing because I had the 2 short films that we did with Oscar, and Oscar has, been a longtime collaborator and very close friend. And, when the script started sort of getting tossed around the agencies, we found them particularly helpful and very receptive. These things always, in retrospect, it seems like the cast got together very quickly. In actuality, it does take a little bit of time, but by the time we're in Toronto shooting, and I've got like Andy Garcia and Emory Cohen and, Megan and Lucy, and it was almost hard to believe initially. But I think generally, to me, as someone, even as an actor who is getting scripts from my agent, I'm not saying my scripts are the best scripts of all time or anything, but scripts, especially if you have, a modicum of taste, scripts can oftentimes disappoint, especially as an actor. I know frequently for myself as an actor, I would, your job as an actor is to go to auditions, really, unless you're in the tiny percentile that are just getting offers and working and making a lot of money working. So your job is to get an appointment and go out and audition, and you do it. If you're lucky, you get a lot of auditions. Oftentimes, as someone who was already writing and sort of a huge cinema buff, I would find it really hard to perform in auditions when the sides that I'm reading, it's just, sometimes it was really hard to find motivation, and so when I'm writing, I try to stimulate myself first, but I am also thinking of performers. And so I think, we were very fortunate in that when people got the big old brick script, the reactions were positive, and people had seen the shorts and at least had enough faith to say, let's see what the guy can do in 2 hours.
As a movie watching Big Gold Brick, when you mentioned a minute ago about wanting it to look pretty, I was really taken back by how surreal and absurd it was. I didn't watch the trailer. I thought, I'm just going to watch the movie and see what I think. And yeah, I was going to ask, was that intentional? Did you go, okay, I'm going to make this dark comedy, or did the absurdist humor kind of naturally occur?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've seen anything I've ever done as a viewer, I think you'll find a through line.
Pretty deliberate.
Yeah, because people have asked, I know people are calling the film like genre bending. In actuality, it's nothing I like trying to do. Like, let's take a bunch of genre. I really can only create the way that I can create. Unfortunately, I would be a terrible like studio writer who's forced to write movies all day for studios, because it's just not the way I approach cinema at all. So yeah, I kind of do my thing, and evidently it's can veer on the absurd and it can veer on the dark. And there's probably some chuckles here and there, but that's the way I actually see life, not to get too deep. Life for me has been totally absurd and very dark at times. And so, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to approximate life as I see it in 2 hours time.
Yeah, and additionally, I mean, when I first saw the film after Brian had edited it, I turned around to him and I was like, "This is the exact script to like down to like an ellipses. The exact thing I read when I first read it." And yeah, it's. I think everything Brian does is extremely deliberate, and it's all kind of written in there from jump.
That's honestly so cool, like how you did manage to translate it exactly and you had a vision. And as an artist, do you think that obviously you're trying to tell a story, and creating a meaning through what you ended up creating? Do you kind of think that sometimes when you go into something with a meaning so already set in your head that it can almost make the result in a way artificial?
I don't know. I mean, artificiality is an interesting topic for me. And I actually like artificiality. I like my world to feel heightened to a degree. You have basically 2 hours to do a lot of stuff in a movie. And one of the first things that I kind of ask myself is, okay, you can make a movie, but what can you make a movie do? And so for me, approximating reality in the course of 2 hours is not interesting in any way. The magic of cinema to me is in the manipulation, just the way magic is. And so for me, artificiality is actually really important. If I can use devices to concoct a moment, to stimulate something in you as a viewer, I want to do it. If that's slowing down time, if it's a particular angle, a specific piece of music, this kind of a lens, something with dialogue. I want to use all of these things to create an artificiality, really, because I believe that, the emotional truth from an artificial moment can be supremely powerful.
Yeah.
So if I can hone in on your word artificiality, I appreciate you giving me the ear.
Honestly, that was a beautiful response, and I wasn't expecting to ask you that question. It just kind of popped into my head, and I really enjoyed what you had to say. I think I don't know if I'm allowed to mention parts of the movie, but just really quickly, the whole Santa bit part was brilliant. I thought that was really interesting choice, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, superb answer. I think that the whole film, when I was reading about it as well, saying genre bending, I completely got that. And the film, the elements of surreal is something that I think isn't celebrated as much in movies these days, and I think that that's really cool to see.
And I think, cinema is an escapist medium, and especially with everything that's going on in the world right now, I think audiences are looking for a euphoric film that they can really escape into, like the Great Depression. They don't want to have reality or the news shoved down their throat right now, though there's a lot of important films that are like that. I think people are looking for something like this right now. So I'm excited to see the response.
No, I'm so excited for you. Just lastly, I just want to ask for both of you, really, and this is such a broad question, so might make you, but do you have any tip for any young creative just trying to make their mark? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of things, obviously, but I think it's being picky with what you work on, finding, from my perspective, filmmakers that are worth working with, and being the most absolute relentless person you can be, and not giving up. I mean, that's how these movies get made.
Further to Greg's point, I would say absolutely. I mean, I actually have written a movie for a studio before. So I've experienced that, and what that formality and sort of the corporate side of that, what that is as a process and what it does. I think for just using the example of this film, I was so hyper vigilant about making the exact film that I wrote. What I do, I don't have a job. This is beyond job. It's a true calling, and I've sacrificed a ton to just make this little movie as an example. And I think you need to have that attitude. I think it really separates, people that are out here sort of working in the industry versus the people that are making stuff that will last forever. And so you need to be vigilant, and you need to believe in the stuff you're making.
And almost to make that sacrifice, There's so many actors who, you know, we all work full-time jobs and we're acting on the side, and it's so difficult. But to then go, this is my passion, I'm just going to do it, and to have that bravery, I think that comes to it.
Absolutely. It's risk. I mean, it's risk. A lot of us in the creative community take risk every day. We are literally risking our life to the point where, you know, you have to make, like I said, you have to make huge sacrifices. I mean, I have friends who live very different lifestyles than I do, because I can't help but make my stuff. And so like, that is my entire focus. And yeah, it's not a lifestyle that's for everyone. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's doing things for the right reasons too. I think a lot of people come in with this big Hollywood dream where it's like, I'm going to hang out with movie stars and I'm going to make a bunch of money and live in a big house in Hollywood Hills. And it's to me, it's really not about that. It's about, do I want to watch this movie when I read the script? And that's the first thing I told Brian when I read the script. It's like, if I have the honor of being any part of this, even in a small way, that would be great. But I really just need to watch this movie at some point. So I'm going to do whatever I can to make it happen.
It's the Robert Frost poem, isn't it? The road less traveled by. And that's what I think being a creative is. And it's so difficult. And, you know, you are a leading example of what it is to be a creative. And that I just completely admire. So well done.